We moved through the kitchen like a dance, passing spoons, opening drawers, brushing past each other in that narrow space between the sink and the counter. Every time our arms touched, it felt electric, and I hated that I noticed. By the time we sat down, the sun had dipped just enough to cast soft cold across the table. I poured us each a glass of the white wine Valerie sent, and for a few moments we ate in silence. Then halfway through his meal, he set down his fork and said the words that froze me. I used to think about this, about sitting across from you like this, just the two of us. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Ethan, I whispered. I know, he said quickly. I know how that sounds. And I'm not trying to make things weird. I couldn't say it. The room suddenly felt so small, my chest tight. I was still holding my fork in midair, as if moving would shatter something fragile between us. There was no mocking in his voice, no boyish teasing, just quiet sincerity, like he'd been waiting years for the right moment to say something he knew he shouldn't. I finally looked at him, and all I could manage was a whisper. Why now? He didn't answer right away. He just stared into his glass, then met my eyes. Because you're here, and so am I. I stood at the sink long after he left that night, staring out into the backyard like it could offer answers. The dishes were washed, the wine glasses dried and put away, the kitchen returned to its quiet state. But inside me, nothing had settled. Ethan's words kept playing on a loop. Because you are here, and so am I. I didn't know what he meant, not fully, and yet I did. There was something in the way he looked at me. So sure, so present. It wasn't youthful infatuation. It wasn't careless. It was heavy with something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Possibility. And the next morning, I woke up early. The birds hadn't even started their usual chorus, and already I was wide awake, tangled in my sheets and my thoughts. I kept replaying the conversation, the glances, the small silences that spoke louder than the words themselves. I didn't tell Valerie. How could I? What would I even say? Your son came over and said something that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. No, that wasn't a conversation I was ready for. Still, by Wednesday, I found myself pausing at the mirror before heading to the store. I curled my hair, not for anyone in particular. I told myself just because. Even put on that soft lilac top I hadn't worn since last spring. It made my eyes look brighter. At least that's what my sister used to say. I wasn't planning on running into Ethan again so soon, but life, as I've learned, doesn't wait for permission. It was later that afternoon, after I returned home and was halfway through putting groceries away, when I heard the doorbell. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door. There he was again, this time holding a box. Hey, Mom made this peach cobbler and told me to bring you a few slices. Is that so? I smiled, stepping aside. Come in. He walked in like he belonged there, like the walls remembered him. The air felt different again, charged but not uncomfortable. I tried to ignore the way his presence made the space feel warmer. We sat in the kitchen, sharing the cobbler, which was still warm from the oven. We talked about small things, his job at the tech firm, my latest garden project, the weather. But underneath it all, there was a hum like music just beyond hearing. Then, as I was rinsing our dessert plates, he came up behind me quietly, like the first time. Only this time he didn't speak right away. He just stood there, close enough for me to feel his breath near my shoulder. Do you ever wonder? He finally said, what life might have been like if things had gone differently. I turned slowly. What do you mean? If you'd met someone else? Or if someone had said something sooner? The room felt still again, like time was hesitating. The geek, we all wonder things like that, I said gently. But wondering doesn't always mean acting. I know, he said. But it's hard to keep wondering when you're right in front of me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should say anything at all. He stepped back then, respectful, like he knew he was pushing a line and was willing to let me redraw it. I'm sorry, he added. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. You didn't, I replied too quickly. Maybe you just caught me off guard. He nodded, hands in his pockets, his eyes soft. I should go. I walked him to the door, heart pounding, unsure of what just happened or what almost did. When he stepped outside, he turned and said, I meant what I said the other night about how you make this place feel like home. Then he walked away, and I stood there, eyes still on the door, wondering why my heart was both racing and aching all at once. The next few days passed in a blur of half-finished chores and restless thoughts. I tried to go about my routine, watering the garden, folding laundry, flipping through books I couldn't focus on, but everything felt off-center. It was as though Ethan had rearranged the furniture inside my mind, and nothing quite fit where it used to. I caught myself thinking of him more often than I wanted to admit. The way he watched me like he actually saw me. Not just a middle-aged woman who once handed him juice boxes and Band-Aids, but someone whole, someone worth seeing. I hated how much it rattled me. On Friday, I walked to the farmer's market just to clear my head. The breeze was warm and smelled faintly of strawberries and cut grass, but even surrounded by the hum of vendors and the laughter of kids darting between stalls, I felt elsewhere. Then, just past the stand selling heirloom tomatoes, I saw him. Ethan. He was crouched down, chatting with an elderly vendor, helping her restock baskets of peaches. I should have turned around. I should have slipped away before he saw me. But I didn't. He looked up, eyes finding mine in the crowd like they were pulled by some invisible string. His smile, soft, surprised, landed squarely in my chest. "Hey," he said when I got closer. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Likewise," I said, glancing down at the peaches, "doing a little volunteer work." He shrugged, wiping his hands on his jeans. She needed help. I was nearby. We walked together after that. No plan, no real direction. Just wandering past rows of fresh flowers and homemade jam jars. The kind of quiet conversation that slips easily between two people who've already crossed an invisible threshold. He bought me an iced coffee, said he remembered I liked mine with oat milk and just a hint of vanilla. I hadn't told him that recently. He just remembered. When we sat on a bench near the park's edge, I felt the urge to speak, to ask the question that had been gnawing at me all week. "Why me, Ethan?" He turned to me, brows furrowed like he hadn't expected it. "I mean, I'm older than you. I'm your mom's friend." This isn't just a little complicated. He nodded slowly, thinking. "Because you're kind," he said. "Because you listen. Because when I walk into a room and you're in it, I feel safe. Seen, like I don't have to pretend I've got it all figured out." I swallowed hard. No one had said anything like that to me in years, maybe longer. "I know how it sounds," he added. "And I know it probably makes things messy, but I'm not trying to pressure you. I just needed you to know it wasn't some fluke, that I meant it." I looked down at my hands, fingers curled tight around the paper coffee cup. I wanted to say something wise, something grown up and measured, but what came out instead was quiet, honest. "I've been alone for a long time, Ethan." Not lonely necessarily, but alone, and I got used to not expecting anything surprising or meaningful. I thought that part of my life was over. "It's not," he said softly. The moment stretched between us, not quite charged like before, but heavy in a new way, full of weight and warmth and unspoken understanding. We parted with a hug that lingered just long enough to make my breath itch. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't forward, it was gentle, and that somehow made it more intimate than anything else could have. That night, I stood in my bedroom, brushing my hair in the mirror, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't see just a woman getting old. I saw someone waking up, and that scared me just as much as it thrilled me. The morning after the market, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the steam swirl upward, tracing shapes in the soft. The house was quiet, save for the ticking clock and the occasional creak of the settling floorboards. Sounds I'd grown so used to, they barely registered. But today, everything felt different. It was as if the silence itself was holding its breath. I kept thinking about Ethan. His words, his presence, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Not as someone's mother's friend, not as a woman past her so-called prime, but as me. And it stirred something I hadn't dared to touch in years. Still, the guilt crept in. Valerie, she had trusted me with her son since he was in middle school. I remembered baking cookies with him at this very table while she ran errands. I remembered his awkward teenage years, the braces and lanky limbs, the 2 big sneakers and bashful smiles. And now I was thinking about the curve of his jaw, the quiet confidence in his voice, and the warmth that bloomed in my chest whenever he entered a room. That afternoon, I found myself holding the phone, thumb hovering over Valerie's name in my contacts, but I couldn't bring myself to press call. Not yet. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter to myself, really, about who I had been, who I thought I would become, and who I was now, sitting in this kitchen, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet. I wrote about the ache of aging in silence, about the loneliness I'd convinced myself was comfort, about the way Ethan saw me, and how terrifyingly alive that made me feel. I didn't send it. I folded the letter, tucked it into the back of my journal, and let it sit there like a secret. Later that evening, just as the sky began to blush with that golden hue only summer evenings can bring, there was a knock at the door. I knew it was him before I even looked. Ethan stood there with a quiet smile, hands in his pockets, eyes a little nervous this time. Didn't mean to show up unannounced. It's okay, I said, stepping aside. Come in. We didn't talk much at first. He followed me into the kitchen, where the scent of basil still lingered from dinner, and we sat across from each other, the air thick with things unspoken. I've been thinking, he finally said, voice low. So have I. He looked down, then up. I don't want to make your life more complicated. If you need me to walk away, I will. But I needed you to know this isn't some passing thing for me. I felt this for a while, and I can't pretend I don't anymore. I stared at him for a long time, not because I didn't believe him, but because I did. And that belief scared me. You caught me off guard, Ethan. You still do. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something, too. Relief washed over his face. Then a softer tension took its place, gentle but undeniable. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready for, he said. I just want the chance to know you, as you are now. I nodded slowly. I've spent years making myself small, I said. Quiet, neat, predictable. And I think maybe I'm ready to stop doing that. He reached across the table, not to take my hand, but just to rest his fingers near mine. A silent invitation. I didn't take his hand. Not yet, but I didn't pull away either.